Good morning, friends. Welcome to the next episode of OBE Journal 2017. Continuing right on from the last episode, which was our interview with the deceased jihadist, the deceased ISIS figure. And when I got up this morning and tracked what I'd been doing 2 or 3 hours ago, it's about 5 now, maybe around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. I seemed to exit my body in a fairly playful mood, and I went straight to Paris, where it was well past dawn, and had some breakfast in a cafe, in a street cafe that I've been to a number of times. And let me just try and capture that for you. Capture it in words. I exit the body without any particular excitement or fuss, and move up out of the bedroom and deliberately, slowly, for the benefit of those who wish to, I guess, see me do that, use that method. And Gordon usually does a sort of a instantaneous transfer, not always, to where he wishes to go in spirit. And you get that way after a while, but there is a certain peculiar joy in doing it slowly and deliberately, coming up through your body and admiring your just the inner glow of your bedroom, if you like. Because when you're looking at the astral replica of your bedroom, it does have a glow that it maybe doesn't have on the physical plane, and it can look slightly different. Little details will be different. Nothing wildly strange, but a little different. And I float up through the ceiling and the roof of the house, and pass through the roof and up into the night sky. And from there, well, I hover over the town, admiring the just that nice condensed energy of the town. I don't know, condensed is maybe not the best word, but it's the one that comes to mind. And I look out over the lake and see the peacefulness of the lake and the night sky, and hold that for a few moments, enjoying it. Move out over the lake a little bit, a few hundred yards. I'm quite close to the lake. I'm only a few hundred yards from it right now, and go that extra little bit and hover over the lake at about 200 feet, and admire and enjoy that series of sensations and intuitions. Something I'm very familiar with, but something I never tire of. And I just hold it there like one would in a mindfulness meditation in the physical body. I just contemplate. And from that point of serene contemplation, I feel that breakfast in Paris is in order. And I fly to Paris, basically. Initially at a slow speed, moving up into a little higher into the sky, and sort of, up at about, I don't know, 100 miles an hour or something, watching the landscape go below me, as it might in a small plane, a small Cessna, and enjoy the darkness and the way the starlight reflects little bits onto the land, and see some lighted towns, and as I move east, the southern part of Canada is quite highly populated, so I do see quite a number of towns. Then passing through the large urban area in and around Montreal. Very well lit, of course. And gaining speed, move through Quebec and New Brunswick, or over both Quebec and New Brunswick. And things are starting to whiz by. And within a moment or two, I'm out over the Atlantic Ocean. And I sort of just fly past, It's a lovely sensation. I don't do it often enough because I usually do the instantaneous transfer because I'm so darn busy. And it's nice to do this. It's almost like cycling as opposed to taking the plane, even though I'm sort of flying like a plane. And just seeing a little more. And the Atlantic and all its heaving glory. And just fly over it and get to continental Europe. I think I hit the pass over southern England first, and kind of make a bit of a right turn, head south to Paris. It's and of course it's been increasing light as I've moved toward the dawn. I forget exactly when that happened, but not that long after leaving the coastline of Canada, I'm over the Atlantic, and you see that it getting a sort of dull daylighty sort of look to it, sort of grayish thing. And then you move into it, and then you start to see the sun in the sky coming up. And because I think about 2 in the morning is about 7 in the morning in England, 8 in the morning in continental Europe. So yeah, I'm flying over countries that are coming well to life, and I arrive in this center of Paris without getting lost or anything. It's the old part that I guess mostly the tourists would go to, and has all the facilities catering to your expectations of traditional French culture. And I plump myself down on this street cafe on a large segment of sidewalk under an umbrella, and I'm basically a ghost. But the one thing I've noticed with places like this is there are other ghosts, or shall we say, either people who are truly dead or people who are out of body at night. And I'm at a small, okay, how can I describe it? Table with an umbrella. So they only got 2 seats by it, a small table, and Oh, I remember what goes on here. There's quite a few people come here. It's become a popular spot for out-of-body travelers and the dead over the years. People who loved Paris when they were alive and who still love it, if they're still alive, and just like the Parisian experience and come here on a regular basis. Just in the same way that a number of folks that live not far, elsewhere in Europe would fly in for the weekend. Book a hotel room and do the Paris thing for the weekend. Very similar to that, and I think you can see by that analogy how people take their likes and dislikes and habits with them when they pass. And as I sit at the table and sort of take in the scene around me and see the various people that are seated enjoying croissants and lattes and whatnot, um, I can, and I sort of focus in on them. I can tell by the level of their glow, dull or slightly less dull, or quite bright. Not just their spiritual state of love and happiness, but also whether they're asleep and out of their body, or more of a dead and doing the ghost tourist thing, of which there's quite a lot, I might add. Quite a number of souls will pass feeling not particularly religious or with any kind of understanding of there is a place beyond to go to. And materialists of one kind or another, skeptics of one kind or another, and but then discover that whipping about as a ghost can be a lot of fun. And it is. It's limited, but it's fun. And some people look up and sort of nod at me. They see me, I see them. And I've been here a number of times, as I've got a number of locations that I visit on a regular basis when I've quote unquote got nothing better to do, and nothing more sort of dramatic or world-shatteringly important, and we sort of hang out, and someone comes and serves me, and I'm never. No, I even think the person that's serving me is a ghost. People love the whole ritual, the whole cafe ritual, and it's sometimes hard because people have been doing this for quite a while, and they can create with their desires thought forms of wait staff, and it's again not uncommon. It may sound a little surprising, but and then others will just play act the whole thing because they quite enjoy it. And I ask for a latte and a pain au chocolat, and within a moment or two I get one, and it is delicious. And some people are reading French newspapers, or the thought form of a French newspaper, and enjoying the morning air. It's July, so it's quite pleasant, and watching the world of downtown Paris come to life. And it is a Saturday morning, so it's not as crazily busy as it might be on a Thursday or a Friday. And I just sit and absorb the vibe. It's very pleasant. Which is, if I was visiting Paris, as I've done once or twice, physically, it's almost exactly what I'd be doing if I was there physically. And so you see the replication of habit and just doing things that you enjoy doing. And of course, there are physical people there. There is the whole physical plane thing going on too. But there's room for there's room for everybody. And that's not just a philosophical statement on life in general. And if there wasn't, I mean, I usually will only take an empty chair, but other ghosts who are either not that conscious or don't care will plop themselves in a astral replica of a physical plane seat. Even if there's somebody there, they'll just sit in the same space, and that's quite possible. As I've mentioned to you before, you can pass through physical plane objects and physical plane people, and occupy the same, geographical space, and they won't know. It doesn't seem to send them any kind of level of discomfort. So the vibrations are too different, and that goes on. I tend not to do it because it's a little. I feel it's in it, and it's what's the word I'm looking for? Even if the person doesn't notice, the physical plane person doesn't notice, you're still sort of psychically invading their privacy. And so I tend not to do that. And there's always some, and as I say, even if your place was busy, I could, or you could, anyone could create a thought form little table with an umbrella and chair and then sit at that. It's easy enough. Once you realize that you can do it, you can do it. As I say, a lot of things are picked up through repeated experience and finessed. At first you don't realize you can create stuff, and then you do it, or somebody shows you how to do it, and then you do it. So I lived through that experience for perhaps the equivalent of 20, 30 minutes. And at a certain point, someone else sits down in the chair beside me. And, well, first of all, they say, is this chair taken? May I sit here? The place is starting to get a little busy. And I say, of course, telepathically, no, go right ahead, sit down. And I interact with this person, and it's a visitor from, quite, all the usual good morning, how are you stuff. And the visitor seems to be from, let me see if I can get this. Finland. Not that it matters one way or the other. They could be from Sweden, they could be from Holland. And the woman says, I've seen you here before, haven't I? And I say, yes, it's one of my favorite hangout spots, and I'd love to come here when I have a few spare moments. And I look at this person, this lady, and I said, I mentioned her, you're asleep, aren't you? And she goes, oh, yes. And she said, yeah. But she says, I do like to travel a bit while I'm asleep, and I get great pleasure out of it. And I asked about her other favorite spots to go to, and she said, well, Rome, of course. And let me see, where else? She says there's a couple of it's kind of beachside tavernas on the Greek islands that she loves to have breakfast at, or the imitation of breakfast. And she said there's something about the quality of light and the color of the water that's almost unrepeatable elsewhere. And so we chat away on that sort of a level. I tell her what I'm up to, and she I think she understands what I'm talking about. Recording my experience to put on the internet as I'm doing now. And she says something like that she supports that sort of activity and feels like it might help people who are not conscious of what they're doing. And then she says something like, telepathically, I'm one to talk. I don't remember most of what I do when I'm asleep. She says, I have little dream snippets of being here and being there. And I don't talk about it much because I don't have hardly any friends that would be interested in that sort of thing, and they don't really want to open up to it. And she says she'd be afraid of being ostracized or for being a little more than a little weird. She does have one or two friends, she says, that um, are open-minded, she says. And she's met them, one or two friends that are open about this. She's met them out of body, and they don't remember. But she says she thinks they like subconsciously remember, and that's what makes them open-minded. Hmm. I asked her if she goes to the sort of natural wonders of the world, like large waterfalls and great mountain ranges, and that sort of a thing. And she nods enthusiastically. Oh yes, I do that once in a while too. And she said it helps keep me happy and balanced, because of what she's saying. My job isn't the greatest. My life's stalled in a number of ways. She says she's broken up with her partner, and her job is well, boring. She said, but she keeps at it because she had this naive faith that she would get promoted to a more interesting position, which she hasn't, and is kind of just biding her time, coping with the emotional difficulties arising from her partner leaving for another person. And I'm sort of thinking, using I mean, everybody uses the word partner these days, but I get the feeling she's using it because it's actually another woman, and it's just a feeling I get, sort of an intuition, and she seems not keen to discuss it further, so I certainly don't probe. She may feel that as a taking the outward form of a man, as I am in this situation, that I would not be open to this, would be, critical or, whatever. And I'm not. I don't mind who people partner with. But she doesn't necessarily know that. And I think her apprehension of me being close-minded or critical about that type of a relationship precludes her intuitive abilities, where she could just kind of reach out and feel me out and know that I wasn't that way. And that's an interesting observation to me, as even as I'm saying it to you now, because you can see the two forces in play. She has a desire to be accepted as an equal and respected as an equal, and feels that a lot of that has been accomplished by just us talking and admitting that we're both asleep and out of body. But she feels that maybe I'm not open to her gender, if you like, gender choice, or partner choice, and withholds that. So she is just sort of limiting herself a little bit, in not terribly significant manner, but it's a small point that I wanted to sort of illuminate for you. So, again, a very pleasurable cafe experience, um, similar to one that would have on the physical plane, as a tourist, as a weekend visitor. And as we know, cities like Paris have many, many weekend visitors. And she asks if I'll be talking about our little chat on this video that I've described that I'm doing, and I say yes, it probably will. Can't guarantee it, because I tend to, I'm just as forgetful as anybody else, and I said I might forget it, but it's pleasant enough, and indicative enough of the sort of things that can happen all the time when you're OBE that I think I will include it. And I give her the information about how to access it online. And she says, "Okay, thanks, but I'll probably forget anyway." And I just sort of said, "Well, don't forget WordofGord." I said, "That's how you look for it, WordofGord." She goes, "Okay, I'll try to remember that." I don't think she's heard of anyone doing this sort of thing before. I think she, sends email and does a few things on the internet, but maybe not much on YouTube. I'm not sure. And when she was talking about breaking up, her partner leaving, I did sense a cloud of kind of sadness, over her for a few moments, and but sort of what's the word? Ameliorated by the, the joyful kind of certainty of her other life that she has when she's out of body, and that other folk might not have. So it wasn't sort of all encompassing as it might have been, and it probably is when she's awake in her daily life, you know. And I'm just trying to think. She would still be, like I say, it's about 8 a.m. Europe time, and I imagine she's still asleep with it being Saturday. And I mentioned this to her, and she says, "Oh yes, I always sleep late on a Saturday. I don't get up till about 10," she says. And my little gift to myself, she says. And I think she also, her and her partner would stay in bed on a Saturday morning. The mention of that doesn't seem to, sort of affect her mood any more than anything else. So that's interesting. And she said, in fact, I'll be leaving fairly soon. It's time. I can feel the body starting to stir. She says, "It'll be time for me to go back soon." And I said, "Well, it's still middle of the night for me. I've got some other ports of call." Anyway, we sit and enjoy the street scene and quietly, and our conversation having lapsed a little bit, but we're comfortable with each other, and we just sit there and enjoy the passing parade. And interestingly, I can sense that a couple of other folk nearby think that we're a couple, and we're not. But that's just interesting. People just sort of man and woman. There's an assumption there, or maybe they think we're about to become a couple, but we're not. There's not that level of buzz there. Just a friendly, sort of, humans on a jaunt, enjoying each other's company for a little while. So again, you can see how physical plane experiences and attitudes are replicated when you're out of body. So, I mean, there are many other situations where people out of body seek each other out for more intimate interaction. There's definitely lots of that. And, we could sort of pick up and walk off and go off together and find a quiet place and be more intimate together. It's entirely possible, and lots of people do it, and do it on a regular basis, and only slightly remember it as an erotic dream or completely forget it. There's quite a bit of both there. And perhaps you've heard me say this before, or read it somewhere in other people's books on their experiences. I certainly get emails from people describing these sort of things to me, either coyly or questioningly, because people have these experiences and they're very vivid, even in dream recall, they're vivid. And they wonder, are they going a little crazy? Are they entering into a completely self-enclosed fantasy world? And it worries them. They want to stay stable and, sane even as they're having what they think of as psychic experiences. So I try to reassure them because there's definitely markers about these experiences. You can sort of tell by the way they talk about them and describe them whether they're actually quote unquote real or quote unquote complete projection of self-enclosing fantasy. And and then some people, of course, meet up with their deceased partner, their spouse, their former spouse, or their former, live-in partner, and will have intimate interaction with them then. They being the person that's asleep and out of body, and the partner being the one who's been dead for a month, a year, 2 years, whatever. And there's still quite a strong bond between them, sometimes a very strong bond. So there's that too. And once people that are projecting get comfortable with their life and their abilities out there, they will choose to meet in certain places. Choose just in a way like, oh well, let's go to Copenhagen this weekend, or let's go to one of the Greek islands. They will choose these things. Sometimes initially it can be a bit rough and tumble, and they wind up in places that they're taken to by their subconscious, and they don't quite like, how did I get here, sort of thing. And then later they get more sophisticated, more like an old hand in the tourist business. You meet them as you travel around, and they know everything about the right B&Bs and the best hostels, and the best deal on fresh fish, or whatever. And it's the same on the astral plane. There's people who have been at it a long time and just do it for the sheer pleasure of doing it. They don't feel like they're learning very much. They've learned initially, and they reach a plateau where they're happy with their level of learning. They don't feel the need to go to the higher planes and experience, angelic beings, or talk to Krishnamurti, or whatever. They're quite happy with what they're doing, and I would not. There's no implication of criticism when I say that. Just some souls aren't as curious as others. It's a lot to do with curiosity and learning through curiosity. And as I say, souls have certain attitudes and predilections that they replicate when they're out of body. The curious person out of body is also curious in their day-to-day life, and those that aren't just aren't. They like to live through regular daily patterns that the mainstream of bulk of people experience. And when I think of all the souls that are interested in what we'll call major league sports of any kind, whether it be football, or I notice Wimbledon's going on recently, tennis, or golf, or anything, as either ghosts or sleeping projections, they will think of their favorite sports and will be drawn to some game or competition or other and watch it as a ghost and thoroughly enjoy it. And so, of course, there's lots of that. Any crowd of when you say watching on a big screen, a high-level golf tournament, and you're watching the crowd behind the fences. If you were clairvoyant, you'd see there would be quite a few spirits in there too, and just as an example, and there might have been spirits that just watched it when they're awake, just watch the stuff on cable, or and then they're out of body and they go, oh, I can be right there, and they do it. So anyway, there's a lot of that. And I just wanted to touch on that more light-hearted social interactions that one can have when one is out of body. And when I take my leave, oh no, actually, sorry, the woman from Finland takes her leave first because she sort of says, you know, I can feel I'm starting to wake up. I better be going. And I smile and wish her farewell. And I said, I'm sure we'll run into each other another time. And she smiles and disappears, basically. Let me see. What happens next? Oh yeah, the next bit's kind of planned. I'd sort of thought about it the day before, and after having talked to the ISIS representative, or the one who thought himself to be an ISIS representative, and did a very convincing portrayal. I was thinking of religious fundamentalists in the Christian tradition, and I thought, you know, I've visited over the years many times some of the heavens that those types inhabit, the sort of people who feel that their sect is the only true sect, the only one that follows the correct precepts and practices and beliefs that guarantee them a place in heaven, and doesn't guarantee anyone else a place in heaven. And they have their own areas of the heaven realms that they live in, and they're small because they're convinced that you know that only the I don't know, we'll say a few 100,000 of them are, you know, the legitimate heirs of whichever biblical prophecy they subscribe to. And I've talked to you before about how certain souls wind up in these places because they're followers, they're weak-willed, and they just go with the flow, and they wind up with the community they've been in the realms of the dead after, you know, dying normally. And people like me, we go around to all these places and from time to time and try to pick up strays, as it were, people who have lost the faith but haven't got the courage to bust out of it. And I've described this in this series and also in earlier books and blog posts. But this time I use automatic transfer this time because I've been to these places a few times. And instead of wandering around in the park areas where they're having their get-togethers and their fun and their picnics, I go right to a place that I know is a pastor's house. And I come right up to it. It's okay, how am I going to describe this pastor's house? It's set in a fairly luxurious suburban style setting. And it's got an aura about it of a soul who tells themselves that complete faith and service to God in the Christian sense entitles one to how can I put it, a natural flow of affluence. And of course that was on earth, and it's replicated in this heaven realm. He took that attitude with him. So the house is a little on the grand side. Not a huge mansion, but you know, grand. In a sort of, I noticed magazine articles that I read starting to refer to them as McMansions, in American magazines anyway. And it's certainly a bigger house than I would have. but I've got my own personal taste, and I'm not going to justify it in terms of others, or play some competitive comparison game. So let me see what's going on. I'm out in the driveway, and I don't see any cars, mind you, but there's a sort of a replication of an Earth-style house, and the driveway is part of it, of course. And there doesn't seem to be anybody around, so I walk up to the door and knock, and someone comes, and I says, is the pastor at home? And they look at me a little strangely and don't quite recognize me as one of them, one of their community, which I'm not. And this person says, my goodness, I think it's some kind of an assistant. It's not a family member. I said, he's busy right now, but I'll go see if he can come and see you. And off they go. I'm standing there. And this young woman comes back and says, he's preparing a sermon right now, but he'll if you want to wait there, he'll be right with you. And so there's a sort of an elaborately sort of carved bench on the front porch that I sit down on and wait. And it's a very pleasant atmosphere. House, garden, birds singing, not that unusual. And it has all that, inner radiance that any surroundings, whether they be, human architecture or the forms of nature, trees, grass, that sort of a thing. It has that inner radiance that it always does. And, I'm accustomed to that. I barely think to even mention it. And I just sit there calmly and serenely waiting for whatever's going to happen next. And hopefully that we'll have a little interaction which will illuminate certain issues for you. And when he appears, he comes to the door and says, "Excuse me, I was busy preparing something. I didn't want to lose my train of thought." And I stand up, shake his hand, and explain who I am and what I'm doing, which maybe I shouldn't have done. And he says, "I think I recognize you. You've been around before, haven't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I passed by. I'm a spiritual traveler." And he says, "Well, basically, I don't recognize the legitimacy of your standing." He says, "You don't belong in our world. And I suspect you are from the dark side and seek to interfere with our community and our people. And I would certainly cast you out if I was able to. And in fact, I used to feel that way about you times when you would come around and interfere." He says, "But now I've come to feel that if I pray for you, you will reform your ways." And I said, "Oh, I see. You feel that your prayer is starting to work?" And he says, "Well, look, you're not trying to steal anyone today." And I chuckle and say, "Yes, I guess you're right. I did come by to say hello and see if we could have an exchange of views." And he said, "Oh, I see. Well, I don't feel that I really wish to have an exchange of views with you. I don't feel that you're deserving of such. But I won't immediately ask you to leave because I understand you have a freedom of movement and I can't really compel you to do anything." And I said, "That's right, you can't." And he said, whatever powers you have are given to you by the wrong person. And I urge you to give up those dark, witchcrafty ways. I said, I see. And I said, yeah. I asked him if he can't accept that my path is as valid as his. And he said, I wouldn't even accord your choice as a path. I would call it a slavery, an enslavement to the dark side. You seek to, people like you seek to poison heaven with your degenerate, satanic ways. And as long as people like me are here, we won't let that happen. But if there are, what's he saying? Those who have fallen away from the path in our community, and you tempt them farther, I've learned that I can't completely stop them leaving, but they were, I recognize that they were well on their way to casting themselves into the outer darkness, and you've just helped them on the last couple of steps. And there's really, after I or we try to, stop them and renew their faith and warn them of the foolishness that they're entering into, we can't ultimately stop them. We've learned that. And but we certainly don't approve of what you're doing. And I said, I see. Well, I'm doing what I think is right. That people who disagree with you or find themselves disagreeing with you have the inalienable human right to their own opinion and to choose their own path. And I'm here to help them do that. And he stares at me and he says, well, I thank you for your statement of purpose, and but I don't wish to be further tempted by your appealing. He actually uses the word wiles. At least I think he does. I mean, again, it's telepathic. There's a lot of telepathic interaction up there, and even the conservative Christians, fundamentalists, use it. They think it's again another gift of the Spirit, which it is. We can't disagree on that. We don't even talk about it. We just assume that that's the case. And he says, "Well, I'll be getting on my way now, and I thank you for your visit." And he very decidedly doesn't shake my hand. I sense he's not going to do that. He's afraid of being infected, I can tell. And his attitude is a mixture of fear and steely willpower. And he wishes me farewell and goes back inside and closes the door. And as I'm relating this to you, I'm remembering some other encounters I've had with fundamentalists, not pastors, but dead fundamentalists who have family members still on earth here that wish to communicate with them and have asked me to be the intermediary. And when I go to speak with them, they do not wish to do it at all. They do not wish to do spirit communication with, it was a grandson or something like that. I can't quite remember. And they just flatly refuse. It's not right. That as far as their Christian outlook is concerned, people on earth should live by faith. And if their faith is weak, they should work on strengthening it. And spirit communication is not the way to do it. Anyway, that's just a small story from years ago. And with those couple of encounters, I shall bid you farewell until tomorrow. Bye-bye.